Want me to tell about my what? Okay. Got it.
All right.
Mhm.
My name is Thomas Wood, and I'm here conducting interviews on behalf of Westchester University, the University of Kentucky's Nunn Center, and our international summer school program that we're both a part of. It is June 21st, 2023, around 12:30 p.m. So we'll go ahead and get started then. But before we jumped into the interview, you were saying something.
No. I'm ready to answer questions. Mm,
Okay.
I'm at your disposal.
When were you born?
Oh, the 23rd of February. Just think about it. 1963. That means I celebrated my 59th birthday and the war started. I am F-23 boy.
And where were you born?
I was born in the city of Murmansk. If you take a look at on the map, it is in the north of Russia, not far from Norway.
Okay. Very cold, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is cold.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood?
My childhood was happy because my family is uh, so worked a lot. We had money. We traveled by car through I don't know to many parts of the Soviet Union. I collected stamps. I was a philatelist, so I read books. Went to the theater, popular theater, people's theater, not professional, um, amateur theater, and I was a museum director, director of school museum.
When did you do that?
Excuse me,
Yeah.
I didn't hear the last question. Could you repeat?
When were you a director of the school museum you went to?
Yeah, in the school where I studied, uh, there was a museum of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. You see, some school children, I don't know how many years before us, maybe it was in 1967, decided to write letters to the people who saw Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, and they collected, I don't know, letters, books of memoirs, I don't know, a lot of things, And it was a school museum. And when I was something like 16, and so I decided that it was very interesting for me to do this. It was my initiative. And in a year, I was absolutely anti-Soviet person and started to not only to doubt that Lenin was a great guy, but just decided that he was a terrible guy. you know, it was an interesting practice.
Tell me about the change in the thought process you went through.
But it was, you can imagine something like I was born in 1963, then it was 1969, 79. The war in Afghanistan began, and the Soviet Union was a country which was full of lies and strange concepts about the world. And I lived in Murmansk, it's a seaport, and all legal literature, including Solzhenitsyn and other guys, penetrated the Soviet Union through the ports. You see, and we actually, as teenagers, when we were teenagers, you see, we got access to all those books, and this contrast. between the official propaganda, which I saw as a director of school museum, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin School Museum, and the reality. So it destroyed my optimism about building communism. So it's interesting. I was very much interested in history, in literature, in humanities, and then it was the beginning of my conflict with the Soviet power. I was not a kind of dissident or something like that. I was and did not participate in any movements or I just doubted and I began looking for my way in life. And at a certain moment, so my father told me that I had to learn a foreign language which nobody knows. And we decided that it is Spanish. and, they, and they went to Kiev, from Murmansk to Kiev, you can imagine, you see, to learn Spanish. And so I began reading Spanish existentialist philosophers, Spanish classical literature, doing other things, you see, and it helped me a lot.
Why did you choose Spanish in particular?
I told you that we decided that it is the language which nobody knows. So you can imagine how ignorant we were. I was an A student at school, you see. I was one of the best the pupils, I only got excellent when I graduated, when I finished school, you see. But we were so ignorant. But it was, it was kind of instinctive reaction to the world, because to survive one should learn something very, very complicated. And we decided that it is Spanish. That was the impulse. Not I didn't know anything about Spain, about Latin America. I didn't know anything about Kiev. I just decided, okay, I have to learn Spanish. Now, by the way, I'm a professional Hispanist. I'm a scholar, and my field of research is Spanish studies.
Why did you need to go all the way to Kiev to learn Spanish?
Because in the Soviet Union there were something like 5 or 6 centers where people could learn Spanish. The Spanish language was taught at the institutes of foreign languages, and there were 5 or 6 of them, one in Moscow, one in Minsk, one in Kiev, one in Irkutsk, or something like that. But Pyatigorsk and Kiev, because my mother, her boss in the pharmacy, lady, these bosses, these ladies, lady boss, let's call it. She had her sister in Kiev, and and I don't know, they decided what to do about me. And then she says, hey, if this boy doesn't know what to do, okay, he can come to Kiev just to learn Spanish. Okay, and decided to go to Kiev. This is it changed all my life. That's how I began living in Ukraine. It was when I was 18, and now I'm 60. You see, for the last 42 years, I have been here in Ukraine, and I have witnessed and survived and experienced all transformations which my country, I mean Ukraine, not Russia. Russia is not my country. You see, I will, so which my country has had, for the last 42 years.
Did you live in Kiev for all of that time?
It's a long story. First, as a student, of course, I spent five before this, by the way, if you're interested in my past. You see, I tried to enter when I finished school 1980. I tried to enter Leningrad University philosophical department. Actually, I failed uh, examination in English. So, and after that, so I spent something like 9 months working in different, at the research institute in Kola Peninsula. It is still there, and I was working on some, I don't know, stations, some centers of collecting information and learning English. You see, and then I see, and that was my decision. And then I lived for 5 years in Kiev. Then after my graduation from the institute or university, now it is National Linguistic University in Kiev. You see, I uh, went to Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv in Russian it is Nikolaev, but in the Ukrainian language is Mykolaiv in the south of Ukraine. And I started my career as a teacher of English at a secondary school. And I worked for a year and I don't know, some months. And then I again returned to Kiev as in American system that will be a PhD student. You see, I worked on my dissertation on Spanish language and literature, and then uh, in 1989, I again and for a long time I returned to Mykolaiv, where I had lived almost 35 years or so, just until 2022. So 32, 33 years, all my life, you see. And I, before the war, you see, before the war started. And I had been teaching literature, uh, and then again literature and all other things connected with literature at one university, then at another university. So just, and I was developing my academic career. I became an associate professor, then full professor. And so at the same time, I traveled to the United States of America as a Fulbright scholar. I was affiliated with the University of Wisconsin Medicine, Department of Spanish and Portuguese. Then I began traveling to Spain, then to other countries. And so I was a guest professor at Montclair State University in the United States of America. And then since 2012, practically all my projects are connected with Europe, not with the United States. But
Quite the career. Wow, you've been around.
yes, it has been an interesting life. Yeah.
At what
Yes.
point in time did you start considering yourself a Ukrainian?
Oh, much. It's a complicated thing. Of course, uh, I am a product of the Soviet system. Then for a certain period of time, pretty long time, I would say I identified myself with the Ukrainian, with Russian culture, culture, not country, because I have no idea what Russian life is, because uh, I don't know, maybe I I have been to Russia since I left Murmansk. I have been to Russia maybe several times, just I spent some time in St. Petersburg and Leningrad when I was working on my dissertation. And maybe a couple of times I visited Moscow in different periods, but my grandmother is from Ivanova, But I don't know. I have not been there since 1987, so it's like prehistorical period. And but I did not identify myself to Ukraine from the very beginning. You see, the first serious question was in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, and I said, okay, I stay in Ukraine. That's it. This is my country. But then for a certain period of time, I identified myself with Russian culture. But then maybe in the second half of the 90s, I had learned the Ukrainian language very well. You see, I had started studying the Ukrainian culture. I became involved in in communication with extremely interesting and important people representing Ukrainian culture. Many of them from the Ukrainian diaspora in the United States of America. You see, and I think by the beginning of the years 2000, I would say I was uh, much more Ukrainian than Russian. And then 2014 and 2022, you see, and I would say uh, maybe by the beginning of this first stage of the war, I had identified myself to as Ukrainian. Now I would say, okay, politically, culturally, I'm Ukrainian, but with some Russian memories.
What language do you think in?
Actually, I speak Russian, but it depends. It depends on the life situation where I'm involved. If I am completely involved in the uh, English-speaking situation, you see, I start thinking English, or sometimes and very often I think in Spanish. Of course, I think in the Ukrainian language, but originally, of course, mm, Russian is my language. It's the language of my mother. I don't see any problem.
And yeah, it's your native language. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. It's the language of my mother. By the way, in English, mother tongue, mother, not father.
Can you tell me about your experience with the protest movements in Ukraine in the 2000s, the early 2000s?
You know what? I have never been involved in any protest movements directly. I have never been participated in any political parties. I would say I was trying to develop my own way of resistance. I used another word, not protest, but I prefer this cultural resistance. You see, the way of I'm a researcher. I'm a scholar, and I prefer working with ideas. It's of course I supported the Orange Revolution and the European Maidan, and I was with my country, in all situations. The only act of this direct involvement was a very funny episode after during the Orange Revolution. As you remember, yeah, there was a period when Viktor Yushchenko and Yanukovych, you see, were fighting for this presidential position. And I don't remember, it was another turn of uh, uh, election campaign, you see. And I decided to get involved to support Yushchenko at the last stage. And we made a special group responsible for voting in Mykolaiv prison. You see, we came to this group of people who supported Yushchenko, and they were, they looked very stupid. They didn't know how to talk to people. They didn't know how to organize anything. You're just rubbish politicians. But we supported the idea. I mean, we university people. And they say, okay, you are so smart, go to the most difficult place. And you say, what is this place? It's a prison. Okay. And we went to prison. I say it was funny because in the breaks between all these things connected with uh, voting, my colleague gave talks about uh, Ukrainian phonetics to prisoners. It was it was very interesting. He explained all this so well. Say, you're a genius. You can explain boring things to prisoners so well. And of course, by the way, we added some percent, to Yushchenko's results, and if you uh, uh, add all contributions like this throughout the country, I think we did a good job.
So you went to the prison to get these people to vote for Lukashenko, or you went to just get them to vote in general?
For Yushchenko, yeah, you say no, just to organize the process of when people throw ballots. You see, we have a team. We had a team, one group working for Yushchenko, and the other group working for Yanukovych. You see, and our group was from the university with two one lady from prison. She worked as, I don't know the right word, the guard, and one of them was prisoner. And the group of our opponents consisted of the people who worked in prison, other prisoners. You see, that's and you see, we organized this process of throwing ballots and counting, and so we spent something like 24 hours in prison. uh, so but it was, and then this orange people, I mean the people of Yushchenko, they were so enthusiastic about us that when everything was over, they came to my office and said, okay, would you like to join the political party? But I had told them before, please don't come to my office with stupid ideas. So, and I you see, uh, um, yeah, I told them, get out of here, guys. I told you, I do not belong to political parties. I have my own way. You see, and my own way consists in writing books and creating educational systems and doing other things. You see, I cannot belong to political parties. I can support them, some of them, if I support them, but I have not found any political party in Ukraine which I would like to support. But I am with the Ukrainian society, with volunteers, with people. I stand for this horizontal networking. You see, support of people. Uh, this is life. My approach. Okay.
Mm. Like sort of like mutual aid, like a lack of hierarchy.
Yeah, something like that. But I'm a university professor. And our academia is not as politically motivated as, I mean, we are politically motivated, but we're not involved in the party uh, structures, like, for example, in Spain. You see, in Spain, very much depends on what political party you belong to. You see, you want to be a professor, and if the left professors support you, you can get it, or the right. So it depends. No, in Ukraine, it's not like this. And of course, I can spend my life, my time, my energy. I can contribute it, but uh, you see, I prefer being independent.
Now, is that the only time you've been to prison?
Yeah, of course. I was not in prison. I was not in. I visited the prison the only time, by the way. By the way, I don't know anything about this world. I'm lucky, you see. It's I sympathize with these people, but I don't know them. You see, I just don't know. I live in. I'm a university person, you know. I live in. I call it intellectual reservation. Okay.
Your ivory tower.
Yeah. Uh, I actually, this is one of the programs of the directions of my resistance, because I don't like this concept of the ivory tower. I think, okay, we have to break this ivory tower. We have to go to simple, to life, you know, we have to do our research about what is really important, you see, and we have to, I did a lot to organize, I don't know, camps for students, you see, as instruments of developing civic society. Okay, I can teach, and we did for since 19 from 1998 until 2018 at the university Petromohila Black Sea National University in Mykolaiv, where I was dean of School of Philology. You see, we every year we organized camps. It was something like teaching English, but not teaching English. It is teaching how to create social projects in English by using, you know, interactive and entertaining forums, and was cooperating with Peace Corps, you know, the idea of Peace Corps, you see, and it was great fun. And at the same time, we did a lot of interesting things, you know, just created social projects for changing the city, for making TV program about making so TV programs are doing something like that, you know, using artistic practices. I'm very enthusiastic about using theater, you know, works of painting or writing poems or doing. So this is my idea. You see, we do something interesting and useful, but we have fun. It's, I don't think, you see, uh, it's a good idea for Ukrainian political parties. And we did our projects in English, or sometimes in Spanish or in German. You see, because another dimension of my activities was internationalization of intellectual life and Ukrainian education. You say, but not in terms that we have to bring only to bring something from the West. Okay, no, my idea was, okay, we should know what life is in the West, because there are good things in the West and bad things in the West, and so other things. Life is complicated. Okay, and let us look at the world in a realistic way. You see, and what is important about Ukraine, you see, this is what I would like to stress, that for all those years, I never faced any type of control. I did anything I wanted. You see, just, I don't know, and I don't know what censorship is. I don't know what being thought control is. I don't know. I found this specific position, and for 25 years before the war started, I had been dean, and I was developing my beloved philology, English philology, German philology, Polish philology, Spanish philology, whatever languages, literature, and combining it with social activities, doing film clubs or doing artistic projects or for anything, you see. And when the war began, it was the end of my world, you see.
So when you say the war began, do you mean 2014 or?
Good question. Now, now I'm working on, now we know that the war began in 2014, but uh, uh, before the 24th of February 2022, I think, I don't know data, I don't know information. This is my intuition and personal feeling, but many Ukrainians, or most of Ukrainians, didn't want to accept the idea that the war had already started. And for this reason, so we used different names for the war. This is one of my future, of my current projects now, a research project. I'm studying theatrical performances as ways of naming the war, and how naming the war changed since 2014, then in 2022 and 2023, and of course after, because you see, we are in different stages. But when I say that the war began, I mean that this full-scale invasion stage war began. It destroyed my world completely. So what was my world? You see, Mykolaiv is a historical center of shipbuilding industry of the Soviet Union. Yeah, it was proud of building air jet carriers, like the boats which scared Americans for many decades. You see, and it was not the best place to learn foreign languages, because in the Soviet Union existed, and it also exists in the United States of America, the concept of closed cities, of closed places. You see, that's military base or military plant or some area which are not allowed for uh, other people to enter, and foreigners, even foreigners from the former socialist countries, could not get to Mykolaiv before 1991. It's a concept of the closed city. Of course, it's not the best place to develop philological sciences, especially what we call foreign philology, foreign languages. But I began doing it, and when I started my career at the Petromohila Black Sea National University, it was 1997. It was my idea, and until 2022, I had been successful in this field. You see, we had the most numerous population of professors who had been on exchange programs, not only American, German, Spanish, French, whatever. You see, we had hosted, I don't know, dozens of international teachers, scholars, you see. We had done, and I had a school. I created my own philological school, something like 15 ladies. most of them women, with, in my opinion, good understanding what their field of knowledge is on the international level. You see, because when the war began, of course they had to escape. They were refugees, and a large group, larger group, is now is in Germany, and some are in the Netherlands, or some others are in Cambridge, or in Great Britain, or in other places. You see, those who were involved in our projects, they found jobs, not only like refugees. Yeah, of course, some of them, they began living on this social assistance, the money which are were provided by the local governments. But in a very short time, they found jobs at the universities that they proved, okay, they were really competitive. But when the war began, I understood that most of them would not come back. You see, or we don't know when they will come back. And see, I lost my team, and I'm nothing without team. You see, I was successful because I had people who understood me. It's not just, it's not just understanding, because I didn't tell what to do. They 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 scanned my source, because you see, they were former PhD students, former students, so they spent many decades, many years with me, and then nothing. At a certain moment, I came to the conclusion I have to go to another place, and we left Mykolaiv at the beginning of March 2020, 2022. So we spent maybe some first 10 days of the war, and then we came to Lviv, the city in the western part of Ukraine, and I so kept on working for Petro-Mogila-Blacksy National University for some months, but then um, there are some personal things in my life, and then I decided to go to the Ukrainian Catholic University. It's a private university with excellent infrastructure, and I think they just needed someone who can who has gained this experience in doing project things, and who can combine research achievements with the good practices of teaching, and someone who can be a kind of manager in developing international cooperation projects. And so I decided, okay, and I never planned it, but now I am in another world. My life changed completely. Not completely, maybe, my professor routine is with me. It's easy, because when we study something, I mean, literary scholars, what actually do we need? Access to texts, but now all texts are in computers. It's
Did
not
any
having a huge laboratory for chemistry experiments, something different.
did any of your colleagues follow you to the Ukrainian Catholic University?
No. It's a unique case, because I have pretty many internationally recognized publications. My experience is really unique, and then That's but my colleagues, those who were connected to me in Mykolaiv directly or closely, you see, they found jobs abroad, in Germany, in Poland, in Netherlands, in the Netherlands, or they won stipends or scholarships or something like that. They have resources and they are continuing their research careers.
If I remember correctly, you said you wrote Spanish language articles or for newspapers about the war in Ukraine.
Yes, for one newspaper. For newspapers, it's it's too many. It's too much for me. You see, it was an interesting experience, and so it began before the 24th February, uh, because as a person involved in Spanish studies, uh, and just I told you about my resistance program. At a certain moment in 2009, I and some my close friends, we initiated the idea of creating association of Hispanists of Ukraine, group of people who are um, who teach Spanish, who study Spanish literature or Latin American or whatever, uh, films, geography, and so on and so forth. And at a certain moment, this structure it helped us become visible in the world. And when it was clear for Spanish journalists and for other people in the world that the war, the full-scale invasion was approaching, something like in January 2022, you see, we saw something which we had never seen before, something like 70 or 80 journalists from Spain came to Ukraine. But I told you that in Ukraine, Spanish is the language who nobody knows. You cannot believe it. If you live in the States, you will never believe it because because everybody speaks Spanish in the United States of America, but not in Ukraine. And our officials, people living, working for Ministry of Education or Ministry, or I don't know if our ambassador in Spain can speak Spanish. I never heard him speak Spanish. It's our problem. And we turned out to be the only professional group, who can speak and write and do something, in the Spanish language. And of course, we, the Association of Hispanics of Ukraine, we decided, okay, if we can be the voice of Ukraine, the Spanish voice of Ukraine, we will be the Spanish voice of Ukraine. Okay, this is our we will do our best to spread the word about Ukraine in the Spanish language. You see, and Spaniards, the Spanish journalists, they are funny. They came to Ukraine and they began writing, sending messages to me and to my colleagues and say, you know what, we were looking for someone, and they're just journalists from La Radio de las Canarias. Can you find us a Spaniard from Las Canarias who can tell us about what is going in Ukraine? I have the statistics. Every year, maybe something like 100 Spaniards came to Ukraine because they wanted to adopt kids. So they adopted kids and they came back. You see, Spanish immigration never existed. And so, of course, there were some Spaniards, but very few. And that was their first attempt to find someone who can tell about what was going on. And then they decided that we're the only group who can do this. And a lady from La Voz de Galicia, the voice of Galicia, so one of the most influential, pretty influential newspapers in Spain, sent me a message to my email address. He said, you know what, you got your address from the Secretary of Ministry of Education of Ukraine, of Spain. So could you write an essay, something like 500 words, testimony, about what you feel. It was something like the 25th of February, of January, you see. And okay, I wrote what I felt. I just described my feelings. You see, this situation of waiting whether the war will start or will not start, that's just when you're lost, and that's like to be or not to be. uh, uh, you know, more or less Hamlet's mood, you see. And then uh, and she said, you know what, you wrote a very good piece of text. Okay, that's okay. And then the the full-scale invasion starts, and I told you I'm an F-23 boy. And on F-24, she sends me another message. Prof, can you write another essay? And I wrote another essay, which is titled uh, Feliz cumple, profesor. I just described how I celebrated my birthday, and next morning, 5 o'clock, we woke up because Russians, you see, missiles were in Mykolaiv. And then I asked this lady if they would like to publish my texts. And it was a great surprise. They said yes. And for 6 months, I don't know, my last text I published on the 5th of September 2022. You see, I wrote texts. You see, it's like 5 texts a week, sometimes 6 texts a week, but no less than 4 texts a week. It's a great job, by the way. And they helped me a great deal because they began paying me money as journalists. I appreciate their help so very much. And then it was something you can find it. It's like chronicle, and there are many interesting things. Of course, it is written for the Spanish audience. I used my knowledge of Spanish culture and other things. They helped me. They were very good editors. People who helped me to make the text sound Spanish. Uh, but when I found my new job, you see, now I'm head of the philology department of the Ukrainian Catholic University. My administrative responsibilities here, they did not leave me any space for writing extra text. And then another negative uh, problem which I have because of the war. I think I am losing my eyesight. You see, I'm afraid I'm getting blind because I had something like very, great myopia, and then I'm having problem. I'm not going to describe the details, but I think it maybe it could happen without war, but definitely I think the war influenced on, because the war influences on everything. So we live in a relatively peaceful place, because Lviv is not the city which I don't like to say this, because if I say okay, it's a more peaceful city, and then drones the day after, so before yesterday, okay, the night before yesterday, were here. You see, but of course it was not Mykolaiv, because life in Mykolaiv became impossible. First, it was dangerous because Russians could occupy the city. Then, for many months, the city was bombed, shelled, destroyed, and so on. And from this, something like this, the beginning of April, the 14th of April, the city is facing terrible problems with water. Now it's better, but you can imagine this. Mykolaiv had something like 500,000 inhabitants, and city without water. You see, okay, this is our life today. And of course, besides writing for the newspaper, myself and my colleagues, we were deeply involved in working with the Spanish-speaking journalists all over the world. So we were interviewed by all channels, by all TV programs, and including Radio Miami, Radio Martin Miami, in Spanish. You can find it, and but the last interview we gave on the 22nd of February 2023. No interviews at all since the 22nd of February 2023. You see, we disappeared. We as group, so that means that Spanish journalists, Spanish-speaking journalists do not need us anymore. It's an interesting thing. I don't know how to explain it. We're doing fine without them. But that means, I don't know what it means. Maybe we did our job, and the societies changed, you see, and European countries began supplying arms and weapons and doing things which we ask them to do, or maybe the Spanish society has a lot of information now, enough information now. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's another experience. So maybe if you are a professional journalist, maybe you know this, but I'm not a professional journalist. You see, I'm a professor. So, and then I work for a year actually as a professional journalist, pretty popular. You see, so I was invited to speak, and I don't know, for television in Argentina, or in some countries. So and then like someone switched off the light, electricity, and you are disconnected in one day.
Even with the counteroffensive going on, nobody's called you about that or anything?
No, nothing. This is strange thing, you saw, because actually this dam destruction, which happened not long ago. It just I was very much surprised. Okay, I understand it, but Kherson is situated 60 kilometers from Mykolaiv. You see, it is our life. It is our area. You see, the water in Mykolaiv, you see, because we are maintaining contacts with our friends in Mykolaiv, and they say, okay, that's the water, how to say it in English, lifted,
Rises. Yeah, rises. The water level rises.
rised something like meter and 4 or 5 centimeters, and it is the critical edge. You see, and the areas we used to go to do nothing, to enjoy our life. You see, the mouth of the Dnieper River, uh, it does not exist anymore. And I say, okay, guys, you know what? We have survived Atlantis. Atlantis. If you read books about what Atlantis was, if you read Plato, you know, we have witnessed it, and journalists do not ask us questions about it. This is, I'm just curious why. Yeah, but it's life.
Yeah, that's so strange to me. Hmm. I noticed in some of the articles you wrote for the Spanish language, the voice of Galicia, it's framed as diaries. Do you carry or do you write a diary?
Never, never, because as a literary scholar, I do not trust the genre. Mm. I read the Confessions of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and then I don't know, it's a kind of narcissist practice. And I decided to call it diary because, of course, it was almost every day. It was like chronicle, and of course, it was written first for me to explain to me what was going to us. It's very interesting that I decided to do it in this. I never thought what language to choose it. Just I began writing it in Spanish. I don't know why. You see, it was not Russian because Russian does not work. If I write Ukrainian, I have to be very, very careful about what I say and what I write. It's not censorship, it is something different. But when I write Spanish, okay, I write Spanish. See, my readers, they are not affected by the war, and it so it turned out easier for me to do this, and that's why you see, first I wanted to call it mi diario íntimo de la guerra, because my favorite Spanish writer is Miguel de Unamuno, and he wrote his diario íntimo in this very strange title for me. Diario is something intimate, but he says diario íntimo is diary, intime. That means it was not intimate at all. It was written to be published. And I decided, to use this idea, well, maybe to attract the attention of readers. And some people, yeah, those, because in Spain, the same thing. No, not very many people. Everybody heard about Unamuno, but not very many people have read his books. Especially if we speak about Il Diario Intimo. Yeah, it's not the La Niebla or his most famous works. You see, of course, it's important, but it's for the intellectual reservations. You see, but of course, it was Diario, and it was a very interesting experience because I woke up in the morning and I wrote 500 words, and it helped me, organize my thinking. And for 70 days, I could not write a word, something like research stuff. But my practice is I write regularly. Write. I have, uh, this practice. Don't have any trouble with writing. You see, and I like it. But for 70 days, I could not write a word, a line on the research. And then, uh, so then day 70 or day 71, I received the message from Spain. And so I wrote my paper with my good friend, also we wrote a paper about Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam's film, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. It's about theater of cruelty, and it's pretty decent academic text, but it has another layer because it is about uh, if you have seen the film. Okay, this film has 45-minute uh, very long part, you see, about presenting play or plays in the Duke's castle. In the Duke's castle, you see, it's in the work of Cervantes. You can find it. You see, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. They are there, and they're involved in this theatrical pranking. Yeah, well, because they are burladores, luego los burladores, they are prankers, that's humiliating. But you see, when we see this film uh, from inside the war, there were a very interesting sense, because instead of the Spanish duke, aristocrat, in the film, you have a Russian vodka baron, vodka mafioso, you see. And actually, it's about humiliating. And I didn't write about this in my paper, but I compared Putin when he declared war with Mishkin. Mishkin, the name of this character is Mishkin, with Mishkin from the film of Terry Gilliam. You see, I am the most important guy. Yeah, I will. So, peace on you. That was, and you will kiss my boots. That's I am, and that's this. Just look for the film and compare it. And since that moment, I just completely returned to my academic routine. You see, and that means now I can live because I can go to the university, I can meet people, I can work on my projects, you see, and in a certain way I can live, because when I write or when I do something, it's just it's not being abandoned, and it's not living in the world when terrible news uh, come all from everywhere. You see, it does not mean I am kind of I'm trying to escape. I'm not trying to escape, but you see, it's so difficult to live in the war. You have, and my life is not, again, so I'm not complaining, please remember, because our system of our approach towards living in the situation of the war starts from zero. Zero is the point where the fight is. All those who are not in the zero position cannot complain. It's stupid. And in my situation, I cannot complain because I just absolutely cannot complain. I'm really having trouble with my eyesight. This is real trouble, but on other senses, okay. Uh, I am in the world in which I had been before the war, but without my wonderful group, without the philology school, which I had created, you see, without my apartment, in which my apartment is not destroyed, but we're living in another apartment, Uh, you see, when you take a look from the 0 point, no, it's not so bad. But in reality, difficult. So hard feelings, hard emotions. They are always with you, every moment, at night, daytime, and so, and it's important to find this balance, between uh, being involved in the war, uh, because it's immoral for people like me to not to be involved, it's a certain point, you see, because this idea of resistance is still here. But at the same time, if I can get some distraction, it's not so bad. And I see that all people do like this.
So you said that when you were writing in Ukrainian, I don't remember your exact phrasing, but it was something like you needed to be more careful. It wasn't censorship. But can you explain that a little bit more to me?
uh, there are problems which cannot be articulated in Ukraine right now. You see, for example, if we speak about Russian culture, Russian language, either you start speaking propaganda, or uh, there is no sense to do it. For example, yeah, so this is easy, because it's so painful, it I'm not the person who will hurt feelings of the people with whom I live. You see, this is one of the things. So uh, um, I'm teaching literature and teaching theater, and there is great difference between teaching theater about the war to Ukrainian students and to American students, because when I start, okay, I give a text to read, and my students in Mykolaiv or in other places, you see, they have been in the occupied areas. Their relatives were killed. Their houses were destroyed. And they start reading the stories about violence. They say, okay, professor, are you crazy? Are you mad? Why do you want us to read this? We just have seen this. We have experienced this. This is one thing. And they give the same text to American students in English translation, and they read it and they discuss it. And it's a great problem, for us, because of course we have to speak about the war, but we have to learn how to do it. And you see, I'm a researcher. You see, I'm the one whose responsibility is uh, to to present this information. I would say it. You see, to the people from Ukraine, because we have to speak about. We have to speak about our problems, to walk through our traumas or other things. You see, but in Spanish, it's when I wrote in Spanish, it's something different. Yes, I write text in Ukrainian, of course. You see, but I write for uh, other or for readers. It is so important to understand this. You see, it is so important. and it's extremely, I would say, interesting, uh, mm, because you see, uh, wording, looking for words. Sometimes it's easier. I don't know. I even cannot imagine the conversation like this in Ukraine, like our conversation now. Because you see, we're speaking, we're okay, we're sincere, we are open. Oh no, in Ukraine, okay, please. There are many people, maybe this lady in front of you, her son was killed yesterday, and you are saying, and then just okay. This is not it's not censorship. I would say it's control of emotions.
It's
Censorship is about ideas, ideology. Uh, Nothing like this in Ukraine. We can speak about anything we want. It's another very surprising thing. You see,
so finding the vocabulary
yeah,
to have these conversations is part of your cultural resistance.
I would say yes. This is my job.
And what kind of I don't know, changes, adaptations, what have you done to try to push that forward, having these conversations?
I'm developing a course which is to be taught at Notre Dame University next fall, this fall. We start in August. It's about poetry and drama created after about the war. You see, and I would try to start working in small groups and smaller groups. I will teach Ukrainian students, and my American colleagues will teach American students, and we will, uh, you know, um, use direct interactions by using Zoom or creating groups so that students could communicate. And by this experimental way, I hope to find the vocabulary or some approaches how to speak, but it will be for a special group of people, students, selected, not like all, but this is what I can do. I'm not, Mahatma Gandhi. I cannot.
You got to start somewhere.
Here, I do what I can.
This brings me into another thing I want to talk about, our international summer school program, because the program you're going to be working on sounds similar to that.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
wonder, sorry, go
mhm.
on.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You were looking like you were going to say
No,
something.
no, no. I'm listening. I'm listening to you first.
I wonder how that fits into the bigger picture of your work.
Perfectly. We can do something like this next academic year. This is just I would like to know more about your summer school, about your project. But I'm fond of doing summer schools. You see, I have gained huge experience of doing summer schools. So to me, in April, I don't know why this school was named as a summer school, because it was a spring school. But we did a very interesting project with my German colleagues from the University of Saarland. This is school of American Studies. And my good friend and colleague, Professor Astrid Fellner, and myself, before the war, we did an interesting project, had done an interesting project, Borderland Stories, about, like students from Ukraine and from Germany. They work together in order to create stories about different aspects of borderland existence, language, border crossing, very popular. in the world now. And we did this project, and this project was named the best project of the year by the Ministry of Education of Saarland. And they awarded us with money, 30,000 euros. And we decided to spend this money on another school. And the school was about culture of testimonies. Culture of testimonies. You see, 5 students from the Ukrainian Catholic universities, 5 students from Petro-Mogila Black Sea National University. By the way, I'm still teaching at my university because I'm doing what I can do to support them, you know. Then 5 students from the United States of America and 5 students from the University of Saarland. I would not call them Germans because there was only one German. And you see, and then because it's the area, so Luxembourg, Belgium, so whatever. You see, and they met together, and so we had 5 days to tell them about different aspects of creating documents about memory from the historical, artistic, whatever viewpoints, and saying the students, and we had a couple of excursions. One of the excursions was to Verdun, you see, and this is just strategies of memorialization and so on. And then we decided that the students would have to make their own projects, working in international groups. You see, in September, students will have to show what will produce. And some ideas were fantastic because our students here are working on the project, the sound landscapes of the war, the sounds which we hear during the war. It's in English, and then we can show it participants of your summer school. You see, this is my idea. I'm using teaching strategies. It's like, you know, constructing something of of blocks, and we need some, you know, bricks for another building, for another construction. We integrate it, you see, and here we can do something here in Lviv, or so I'm open to projects. I like this form because I don't have to grade students.
What do you hope to gain out of the summer school?
Development of consciousness. We open minds. What is the sense of education? To open minds. And grading has nothing to do with open minds. You see, it's a tool of punishment. Yes, of course, it's important for developing some culture or something like that. But so open mind starts inside. It comes from inside of us. You see, not from grading. Okay, the person has to grade himself or herself. That's the point.
Can you describe the week for me? I don't know how you felt about it, the experience itself.
You know, very complicated, very interesting, but extremely complicated. Because again, teaching. You see, an American professor, excellent professor of history, he he told some interesting stories about how stupid American government was during World War II. He said, you see, you know what? Someone told President Roosevelt that the Japanese are afraid of foxes. And Americans, you see, they I don't know, created farms with millions of foxes. And then another idea, what that the Japanese are afraid of bats. And American students, you see, they are not in the war, they start laughing. But our students say, okay, you know what? We don't like when you laugh about things connected with the war. And the professor looks at us and says, what's going wrong? What is going on? So please, we're talking, okay, ask your students not to laugh loudly the way American students like to do. That's it. Because our girls, from Ukraine, they start weeping. This is we learn again. We see. I'm a limited person. You see, I'm a professor. Everything is about teaching, learning, so education, or something like that. You see, and nothing heroic. You see. But it was so complicated. Or another experience. I was telling about one project which is being created in NYU in New York. You see, a theater director uh, uses English translations of the Ukrainian diaries, and so he makes, or he asks, or professional actors and actresses read them. You see, when I showed two pieces, and it was kind of like such a strong cultural shock. I show it, and people cannot talk. You see, uh, because you start weeping. Tears come to your eyes. You cannot control it, and it's again, great challenge. No, it was very, 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 very interesting. It was interesting even in terms we brought students from Lviv and from Mykolaiv, different parts of Ukraine, and students in Mykolaiv, they are involved in all dangers of the war, and people here in Lviv, they're not, and they live in the same country.
All right, I have a few more questions, and then I think we're gonna
Okay.
start to settle down with the
Yeah.
interview.
Okay, great.
My first question is, has there ever been something that you changed your mind about drastically, like something you really believed when you were younger, but your mind changed into the other side of the spectrum, and how did that go?
uh, I would say I buried Russian culture. I know that it will exist because culture exists. I know it as a historian of literature, and I know that we are not the first. But now it is important to me anymore when I think about uh, some important questions about something like sense of life, the meaning of death, or other things, and before, okay, this is what Dostoevsky wrote about. Now, what the hell Dostoevsky is? Of course, as a professional, if you ask me to speak about some texts and so on, I can analyze it and bring something interesting, and even I can sell it and so on. But I don't think I will take money for teaching Russian culture. No. I would do something else with other cultures. I can do it, but you see, it's over. Maybe this the only thing, because we spoke about the very beginning. I identified myself with cultural sense, with culture, not with the country. I see. We are extremely shocked here how uh, low the cultural level of the contemporary Russia. Some people say Putin Russia is. Oh, it's something uh, absolutely shocking, you know. But now it was shocking maybe a year ago. Now, after what they have done, as you see, they can explode the atomic station in Zaporizhia. They can do it. Okay. More questions?
Yeah. So you would have been in your what 20s during early 20s during the Soviet war in Afghanistan. Can you compare your experience during that as a civilian during the Soviet war in Afghanistan with your experience now as a Ukrainian with the Ukraine war?
No, no, it's not comparable at all, because it's absolutely different, two different situations. Now, I could I could compare. I would say that we are like Afghanistan, okay, and the idea is the Russians have come to destroy Ukraine. Maybe people of Afghanistan in Afghanistan felt like us, and their problem is that people in Afghanistan, they didn't get they got the support from the United States of America, from other countries, but we cannot compare the level of support. Then I don't want to say anything bad about Afghanistan, but we should remember that in Ukraine we have a very high level of education. That means people are good enough to learn how to use American tanks, American sophisticated equipment. Many people say that we're better than Americans in this sense. You see, you see, mm, but it is connected with education in many senses, because I have a, I cannot say a friend, but a colleague. He is a mathematician, art, artillerist, you know, yeah, and you can imagine he's one of the, you know, this highbrow guys, you know, and with quadricopter, you know, he was just, and you know, this is something, yeah, in a very limit with very limited resources. With very limited resources, you see, Ukrainians achieve amazing results. It means that, you know, this is something different. I don't think it happened in Afghanistan, but the level of resilience, you see, the resistance, it can be compared. You see, but the scale of the event is something different, because in the Soviet Union was happening more or less the same what is happening in Russia. Everybody pretended not to see the war, and people didn't see the war. I discovered something about the war at the institute. The university was learning Spanish, because half of our course were young men who had been to the army and some of them had been in Afghanistan. You see, they had been there, and then they continued their studies, and like people, young men, like myself, it's just, I didn't have anything to do with the army. It's blind, and then we uh, lived in the same dorms with students from Afghanistan. The students from Afghanistan selected by the communist regime in Afghanistan. The worst people in the world, really. You see, because the people in Afghanistan hated them and we hated them. We didn't like them because they were hypocrites, and they came to the Soviet Union because they, and they were very stupid, extremely stupid. You saw, once I went into the room, one of the students, I'm not racist. I don't understand it. So I don't mean that people in Afghanistan are stupid, but those who were sent to the Soviet Union it was a product of special selection. You can see that once I entered the room of one guy, and so on the bookshelf, it was empty, and the only book was on the bookshelf. It was Capital by Karl Marx, which he never opened because it was too difficult for him to read this book in the Russian language. And next to them, he had socks. He was drying socks on the same bookshelf with the with the book of Karl Marx. You see, and our young men who had been in Afghanistan, when they saw those people from Afghanistan, you see, from Afghan young men who were escaping from serving in the army, or were, you see, the only thing was prohibited strictly in our university. Drinking was not prohibited. The only thing, you see, these students were expelled from the university if they started fighting with international students. By international students, we meant only one category of students, students from Afghanistan. You see, and our young men, when they began, so they wanted to start fighting, we were just, please stop, don't do it. You see, we made circle. You see, please stop doing, do not attack them, because we don't think about this guy, but you will be expelled tomorrow. You see, and this is the hatred which we saw. It was something, but it was, in the Soviet Union, this war was limited. It was not shown, you see, and it took, by the way, I think we can speak about the war in Vietnam and the United States of America. For many decades, people pretended not to see it. That's what happened in the Soviet in Russia today. You see, uh, that's what I think now. You see, but as far as Ukrainians are concerned, mm, we feel threatened, the whole nation, everyone, and it's the main reason of our resilience. We have no option.
All right. And then one final question. Is there anything we didn't talk about today that you would like to talk about?
No, I appreciate your questions. You a good interviewer. You made me speak about some things I didn't expect. It's just okay. I was thinking, what I'm going. He wants to know about my experience. Okay, I did it. So we spoke about it. We've spoken about it. No, I would continue. I thought you were a professor, by the way.
I know. I didn't know how to correct you, so I just let it go.
But maybe you noticed that I'm so sorry to
You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
You see, most of the messages I receive, they are from the academic world, and they have been interviewed, including questions like this, but for other reasons. You see, like, I don't know. And then, okay, another professor. Professor Wood. You will be a professor then.
Maybe eventually. We'll see. We'll see where the world takes me.
I have a prophetic talent.